We're not the bad guys. We're all at Save on Foods or whatever. Some kid will be crying and the BB will grab the kid by the arm, will drag the kid up to me and start yelling at the kid. Hey, banda policeman, yeah.
Oh my God.
Je to ron no hatya nahi aane tenu huni phad ke te lerna hai.
Yeah.
That kid would start screaming even more. Manager's coming out to see what's going on and I'm in the middle of this thing. It's like a zombie, man. You could hate it. And I just came to pick up my cheese.
Yeah. Hey guys, welcome back to the HBM podcast. Today I'm excited to announce we got Kal Dosanjh in the building for the pod. I'm so excited to have Kal in here. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Where do we start, man? Where do we start? Policing, right? So you got into policing back in 2000, right?
Yep, you got it.
2000, and you've been doing it for now almost 23. It's 23 years now coming up, right? Yeah,
100%.
Right? How has it been? How's the journey been?
You know what, brother? It has been absolutely transformational. It really has. I think I'll just get into a brief history of it. When I first got on the job, I had no intentions of getting into policing. To be honest with you, I was on my way to law school.
Oh, that makes sense because your degree was in psychology and...
Crim and psych.
Yeah.
And so, but I always wanted to go to law school. I think, alluding to our previous conversation, is that Punjabi parents want their kids to either become a doctor or
a lawyer and engineer. Staple
right?
job.
And so, 100%.
Is that why you wanted to do it back then, be a lawyer?
It was a combination of various factors.
Yeah.
I was always fascinated by the adversarial nature of law, but combined with the fact that,
the way that you can spin a story anyway. One way somebody might be a very terrible person, somebody with different skills can make them sound like...
But above and beyond that, like from that perspective alone, I always had a very strong sense of justice. As very cliche as that sounds, but growing up in a very traditional Sikh family, my entire family is Amritdhari.
Okay.
So growing up in a very traditional Sikh family, I would grow up with stories about Guru Gobind Singh and the sacrifices that were made, and I think what fascinated me so much about the warriors in our culture, the Baba Deep Singhs, the Baba Banda Singh Bahadurs, was that they always stood up for righteousness.
Exactly.
They always protected the weak and the poor, and you know what? Growing up with those kind of stories, it becomes ingrained in you. You get instilled with those principles and values, and growing up with those strong principles and values, because I grew up as a Sardar.
Yeah.
And so in that respect, I think going to law school was that, you know what, my grades were good enough that I knew that I could make it. And so in preparation for my LSAT, which is the exam that you need to complete in order to go to law school, I had the grades in university. I was finishing up my last year in the crim program, and I was prepping for my LSAT. And then this opportunity came up called the RCMP Summer Student Constable Program.
Right.
And so I was thinking, you know what, why not? Because even if I did go to law school, it was always my intentions to go into the prosecutorial side of the criminal justice system as Crown Counsel. So why not understand the other side of that coin, which was law enforcement, right? So in that respect, I was always fit, always playing sports, and so in the physical demands of the job I knew I could handle. So essentially what the Summer Student Constable program is that it was a 6-month crash course, and they basically put you in an academy, and they taught you legal principles and rules and regulations surrounding policing, and they taught you basic combat skills. I already had the combat skills because I was already doing kickboxing. And so that was my background.
Yeah.
But they taught you basic combat skills, grappling, fighting, punching, kicking, and they taught you to work with basic weapons. So what they gave us was a flashlight, a pair of handcuffs, and a baton. That was it. So that's all we got. And so they gave us a uniform, fit us out, a quick crash course, and threw us on the streets.
Really?
With a mentor. So the mentor was a senior police officer that was our field trainer, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so I was posted to Surrey. And this was back in 97.
Very different time.
97, 98. And trust me, man,
crazy.
It was completely different times. You guys would not believe it.
How was it compared to what you expected going into that as your age, going into it?
You know what, policing, I'm telling you, man, it was like, not a word of a lie, like it was exhilarating. That's the only word that can describe it, because I come from a very insulated background, and I'm tremendously naive about some of the stuff that's going on out there in the real world, right? Like, I haven't been exposed to the drugs, the gangs, any of that sort of stuff, the stabbings, the fights, the assaults, you name it.
Like now you have, but back
right?
then.
But back then, like when I'm coming from a very insulated background and I'm thrown literally into the fire, like it's what's called baptism by fire. Like either you sink or swim, and you're thrown into that. And I was like, oh my God, like this is insane.
Yeah.
Right? Like I was literally like running after bad guys. I remember this one, we had a pursuit.
Yeah.
It was a police pursuit, and we were after a motorcyclist. A guy took off on his bike.
They think they're so fast, right?
What he was.
They
He
are,
was
though.
fast,
That's
and
true.
so the thing is, we had to set up. They set up blockade points and so on and so forth, and perimeters, right? And he dumped his bike and he took off on foot. And my
Okay.
field trainer just looks at me. He goes, "Go."
That's
That's it. Like I'm like,
That's where those physical
I don't
capabilities
recall
come in.
signing up for this. Or maybe I did. I
Did you
don't know.
get him?
Yeah, you know what? I chased him
Really?
into it was parcel of forest.
Yeah.
And I chased him into the corner, and then they brought in the dog, and they took him
Oh.
into custody.
Oh, okay.
Can't run
But,
from Cal.
Can't run from
Well, you know what?
Listen of the
Cal's
podcast.
quick.
If you see this man on the streets of Vancouver, do not run.
You know, because Cal's a very big guy. He might not come off initially as being able to be very quick. Well, that's awesome that you pull it off.
Yeah, you know what? It was over the years. Unfortunately, powerlifting has taken its toll on my knees, but
Yeah.
you know what?
Oh.
It was fun, and but as soon as I finished that program, I was like, this is it. Right? It's just there is nothing like literally. You hear that saying, like it's a call of duty. Like that's what it
Yeah.
is. Like internally, you feel this call.
I think that's amazing.
A sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
Right, and you gravitate in that direction. And so for me, it was just like I had this inherent pull that this is what I need to do. Like everyone has a purpose. It's just a matter of finding that purpose. And I discovered it early. I'm grateful for that.
And when you don't find that purpose is when you get so many people now you'll talk to, and they'll be like, yeah, I'm in university, but I don't really know what I'm doing. They feel lost, and so many things come in. But if you can find that purpose, I really think that's one of the biggest gifts.
100%. But speaking to that very point, like we have a lot of senior volunteers that are part of the KidsPlay Foundation that when they first started university in their first year, they said the same thing. They're like, we're lost.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know what we want to do.
You're
And
overwhelmed.
I explained to them the same thing that was told to me by my mentors. It's okay.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that, right? It's normal
Hmm.
because not everyone has that sense of direction right away. Sometimes we need those trials and tribulations and those experiences, and that knowledge comes with time. And it's always, the universe always has a plan.
Yeah,
I firmly
for
believe
sure.
that there's no such thing as a coincidence.
Yeah.
And so at some point in time, there will be some incidents or circumstances that are in your life that'll give you that direction, that'll give you that push.
When you look back, you see that. But in the moment, do you see that? I don't know.
No, in the moment,
Never.
no. Like in the moment, there's going to be a remarkable amount of self-doubt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a remarkable amount.
A remarkable amount, and on top of that, it doesn't help when you got family and friends that are kikari on the hand.
Yeah, no, 100%.
फलाने दा मुंडा देखा
फलाने दा मुंडा देखा, right? I know.
That's true,
You
bro.
become a
That's
lawyer,
true.
they're gonna be like, why didn't you become a judge? Right?
Yeah, anything, man.
Anything. But
That's
point being
crazy.
is like this journey is yours, and it's. I'll tell you right now, it's not like my parents were thrilled. That
Yeah.
I became a police officer.
It's
They were
dangerous.
like, they were like, what?
So done an office job, sat behind a desk, 9 to 5.
They're like, "Tenu ki kam hai?" Right?
Yeah,
It's just.
I think it comes from a part of they want the best for you in terms of job security, but they also probably fear like, okay, police officer dealing with criminals, you know, putting your life on the line. I think it comes from a place of like they want to keep you safe as well, right?
That, and also, believe it or not, when I say this to you, that their personal belief systems were essentially centered around the fact that they didn't think policing possessed any level of prestige.
Because
Or
where they
title or
come from, it
status.
almost doesn't.
Well, of course,
Right.
right? And I explain that to a lot of my fellow colleagues at work. They're like, "Hey, man, like, why in the South Asian community, like, why is there such a distrust and hate of police?" I said, "Well, it essentially stems from the old country. Like back in India, there was a tremendous amount of systemic corruption."
Still like that.
That was embedded into the criminal justice system. And when they're coming from a background where cops are bribed, right, and
Like in broad daylight.
in broad daylight, and cases are dropped, like of course, right? I mean, there's going to be a remarkable amount of distrust. And a lot of that also goes back to what shortly happened after 1984.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So in that level, a lot of parents would push their kids away from that line of work. It's like, no, you're going to law school. You're not doing policing. But for me, I was very stubborn in that respect. And I was very steadfast, where it was just like, no, that's my calling. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
that's the end of that.
That's the one thing that you could feel was that like being fulfilled from that calling. Whereas your parents, you were just going into the line of law enforcement.
It's so overwhelming, that feeling of that sense of purpose, that you know that this is meant for you. Period.
I think so too.
Like, it's just like, you know, like, this is it, do or die. I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Right. And here I am 23 years later.
I wanted to ask though, just with something with policing, right? And going back to your parents as well, are they? I'm sure they're proud of you now, right? Obviously, with what you've accomplished so far and what you've done, right, over the last 23 years, like, you know. But what was some of the challenges of getting into policing for any like up and coming youth that thinking about it as a career?
Man, you cannot walk into it thinking it's a cakewalk. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just anybody that is arrogant enough to believe that I got this, it's going to be easy. Like, really, what's there to it?
Yeah.
No, you can't go in with that level of arrogance and attitude. Right? Like, it's very humbling experience.
Yeah.
Where I had never shot before.
Yeah.
And using a firearm for the first time, and tons and tons and tons of legal information that you literally have to memorize. Combine that with learning how to interact in various scenarios, where, like, if this situation presents itself, how would you act? And they actually bring in actors. And
really?
Yeah,
Really?
you have to play out
Yeah.
those scenarios, because they want to see how you would react before
Yeah.
they put you on the street, right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, suspect just talking to you, all of a sudden reaches in his pocket, pulls out a knife. That is very realistic,
That is, yeah.
because these situations have happened to me on the street. But that training was absolutely first grade. It was tremendously remarkable.
It was the best they
training.
could have done.
The best they could have done, because the thing is, they've taken all the training principles from around the world, the best of those principles, and they have best practices. And so when you're presented with this kind of situation, here's what we expect from you. If you're presented with situation B, here's what we expect from you. These situations are always fluid and dynamic. You can never really prepare for any particular situation.
Yeah.
All you can do is learn the fundamentals, and mentally, physically, psychologically be ready should that situation present itself. And I can share some of those stories with you if you like.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
for
Because
sure.
there's always that X factor. Well, they'll train you what to do if X, Y, Z happens, but then you'll be there and there'll be that one thing that maybe wasn't taught to you, like that crazy scenario that happens, and it's a little bit crazier than what you might have planned for.
100%. So one particular scenario in the downtown east side was that we got a call that one of the tenants was being assaulted at one of the SROs, which is the single room occupancy buildings. I think it was at the Balmoral. And this is the 100 block of East Hastings. So these are rundown buildings where you have these tenants that are residing in these buildings that are subsidized. And a lot of times you have these predatory drug dealers, vicious, going in and collecting debts. And so in this particular situation, we received a report that one of the tenants was being assaulted at one of these buildings. So it was myself and another sergeant that ended up walking into the building. We received a description. As we're walking into the building, the guy with that description is coming down the stairs into the lobby. And as soon as he sees us, he kind of tightens up a little bit. And I'm like, both of us are kind of looking at each other, me and the sergeant. It's like, no, you know what? There's something to this, right? So as I reach out to grab onto him, the fight's on. Like, he literally, like, he's throwing punches and we're doing the same. So
Like 0 to 100 in a second.
0 to 100 in a second, millisecond.
So they take-
So we're both fighting, and all three of us on the ground. And then he starts reaching down into behind his pocket, reaching into behind his pocket. And I reach back there as well, because I knew he's reaching for some kind of weapon. It's a loaded gun. I didn't realize it was loaded until afterwards, but he's reaching into his pocket and he's literally pulling out the loaded gun on us.
Yeah.
So I grab onto the gun and I'm struggling with him, and the sergeants, like, both of us are just trying to take control of him. I was able to wrestle the gun away from him.
Yeah.
And nobody else is in the lobby except for the clerk who's hiding underneath
Yeah.
the desk, obviously.
Yeah.
And
I don't get paid enough for this.
I grab the gun and I just chuck it in a safe place just a few feet away from me, so at least I can control him first.
Yeah.
And as soon as he was taken into custody where we put on the handcuffs, then I go pick up the gun, and sure enough, yeah, it was completely loaded. It was good to go, the one in the chamber. So had
that's
this guy
crazy.
been able to pull it out and pull the trigger, it was game over, right? And
Yeah.
this was not the first time something like that had happened with me. So I'm grateful that the sergeant that was with me, like, he's a very skilled fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's got tons of experience in the downtown east side, so that's the kind of partner you want with you on the beat. But
Yeah.
the downtown east side was a different beast, a completely different beast than any other kind of policing.
Yeah.
So these scenarios are very vivid and they come off very, very like extreme. And we were talking before this about the self-doubt in the moment. I know you might be very mentally resilient, but a lot of people out here, they might hear this story and be like, I would go to myself and I would think that night, is it worth it? Like, I was so close. It was a one in the chamber situation. Did you ever have any moments after scenarios like this where you would think of things like that? Or how did you really deal with all this mentally?
Before you get on the job, I don't think you can be naive to the fact that you need to have proper mental coping mechanisms.
Right.
Like, you can't just go in under the belief system that your psychological systems are resilient enough that you'll be able to deal with any situation that comes your way. I think over time you need to bolster and reinforce your coping mechanisms with proper meditation and just an intrinsic understanding of where your weaknesses are, where your deficiencies are. Because otherwise, I'm telling you, like, the example that was given to me when I first got on the job is that emotions are like a bag.
Right.
Yeah.
A bag you threw over your shoulder. If every situation you come across, it's going to have an emotional element to it.
Yeah.
And if you start throwing those emotions into that bag is going to get heavy, and you're not going to be able to carry it around for very long. And so I think the great thing for me is that I was always big on meditation. And I'm able to sort of ventilate
Right.
a lot of these stressors or challenges through constructive means. So I found it very therapeutic to be working out regularly.
Right.
I did powerlifting at a very high level, competitive level, and obviously meditation as well, what Simran. And so in that respect, it's just you have a combination of these various factors which you can utilize to positively ventilate all these negative stressors that you might be experiencing. But the job itself, it's not just physically demanding, psychologically, emotionally, it takes its toll on you.
And even like the whole thing about being calm. I remember I was watching that Vision TV interview of you in the downtown east side walking on the streets, and there was like a very large amount of calmness where we were talking, we're like, yo, if we were here, we would be looking around 360, we'd be paranoid. But I could guess it was maybe that relationship that you built. And also going back to being calm and like meditation, I noticed that a lot in my life too, where obviously I've done nothing as adrenaline intense as policing, but meditation since a young age has made me very stoic to a sense where, like, when I was in high school and university, I would be working a lot of customer service and people would be screaming in my face. But like, I think if you start to panic, it sets off fight or flight in both of you and it turns into a weird situation.
Oh, 100%. Like, human instinct is just that. It's fight or flight. Right? Like, it's just once the adrenaline kicks in, then your body is thinking of just two avenues that are available to resort to, fight or flight. And granted, don't get me wrong, like, I wasn't always that calm when I first got on the job and I'm dealing with extreme situations. Like, you start to hyperventilate. It's like,
Yeah.
like, well, what is this, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think your system is adjusted or acclimated in such a way to deal with that level of stress that you're experiencing, because all of a sudden it's a huge adrenaline dump on your body, and the cortisol is kicked in, and your body's just in high octane drive mode. But over time, you learn to recognize those feelings, what the physiological responses that your body is going through, and you learn to control it. And that's why, like, over the course of years, I went from that young rookie kid that just got on the job and like feeling that anxiety when I'm responding to a major call to later on down the road is being the acting sergeant in the downtown east side,
mentor.
running 3 major calls simultaneously with a cup of coffee in my hand, right?
You grow to learn how to deal with that situation though, right? Which, I mean, it comes with experience, right?
100%.
And then You were talking about how gangsters now, like 2 of them have joined KidsPlay and they're reflecting on that lifestyle. I was reading about Stan Price and you and him going to schools and going around and he being an indigenous gangster and all that. When you talk to these people that have now like flipped the coin and came to the other side of life, how do they reflect on how they spent their time, or like what's their whole like energy and persona like?
Oh, day and night. Day and night. Like I talk to Stan and Shane all the time.
Yeah.
Like they're part of our program, and they come out regularly. But every time I talk to Stan, and Shane, both, in addition to a lot of the other gang members that are part of our organization, you got Shanann, you got TJ, you got Mindy, all these guys that come out regularly.
Yep.
You talk to all of them are extremely grateful. They're grateful for having changed their lives. They're grateful for the opportunities that have been given to them. They're grateful for this platform. And all of them say the same thing to me. Every single one of them say the same thing to me. They said, you know what, we couldn't be any happier.
Really?
And they mean that. Like they have found a sense of peace.
Through KidsPlay.
Well, through finding this better life for themselves, right? Obviously, KidsPlay has been an important part of that journey, but just changing their lives for themselves, right? And transforming to become better human beings. They said, you know what, it's been completely life-altering, and they have found a sense of peace that they never had before, a sense of self-fulfillment, because it's not just a matter of becoming better human beings, where they're not involved in that destructive behavior, but combined with the fact that they're actually giving back. It's one thing to be a good human being, but everybody's capable of good just for themselves.
Right.
It's like, what are you doing above and beyond that in terms of seva, to give back, right?
Back.
Like it's what's beyond you. Like how are you extending yourself into that universe to help others, right? Taking your time, talent, skills, right? And it's your ability to make a difference in somebody else's life and not just your own. I think that first phase in their life was making that difference in their own lives for themselves so that they can better themselves and excel. And that second phase now is that they're taking everything that they've learned and experienced and they're sharing that with others so that no other child or kid falls into that trap. And that takes a tremendous amount of courage.
Right.
I respect that. And I tell these, with all of us, there's a mutual level of admiration and respect for one another. And there has to be, where it's just, I am so proud of these guys for taking this step and helping others. And like I said, they have found such a sense of self-fulfillment from that.
Right.
With Stan, you know what? He was the leader of an ultra-violent gang, and the Red Alert in the downtown east side. And one day I just, working shift, I had enough. I walked right up to him, straight into his face, and I said, you know what? I know you have kids. God forbid your kids ever get hooked on the same drugs that you're selling to these other kids.
Right.
Only then will you know the pain of a parent.
Wow.
And in his customary way, he tells me to F off and all that, which is fine.
But it hit him on the inside, that type of thing.
Well, check it out. 5 years later. 5 years later. He calls me. He calls me, gets my phone number, calls me, and says, hey, it's Stan Price. Do you remember me?
Yeah.
I remember you, right?
Yeah.
And he said, you know what, I want to meet you. I want to talk to you in person. So I sit down with him, and he goes, I never forgot what you said. He said, you were absolutely right. He said, my son got addicted, nearly died of an overdose, and I need your help. That I'm ready to leave that lifestyle, and I want help for my son too.
Yeah.
And so Stan changed his life after that, and Stan not only became a close friend, now he's also a mentor in our KidsPlay Foundation drug and gang program, and he's also the assistant manager at a transition housing. So he's doing amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. That's crazy. I had a story of maybe a big moment of revelation you had related to seeing a 14-year-old child in the streets.
Yeah, 100%.
Which sounded really powerful.
That was one of the many stories that I experienced that led to my evolution, so to speak, in my thinking process. But in this particular case, I was the acting sergeant. I pulled my police cruiser into a lane in the downtown east side. It was 2 a.m. in the morning. It was raining heavy, and this young kid is sitting behind a garbage dumpster getting his crack pipe ready. And later on, I learned he was like 14 years old. He sees my car, he dumps the pipe, and he starts to walk away. Like, I had already made up my mind that I'm not going to arrest the kid. It's just, I think things had been culminating up to that point where it's just my entire perspective was changing. But you're absolutely right. This was a revelation of sorts where I get out of the car. I'm like, hey, stop. He kept walking. So I asked again. He turns around and he puts his wrists up in front of me like that. And he goes, if you're going to throw on the cuffs, do it now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I take it, I'm free to go. And his audacity came as no surprise. It's because he was a byproduct of his environment, hardened and calloused.
Yeah.
So I say to him, I say, hey, where's your home? Where's your family? Or, like, what led you down this path? He thinks about it for a moment, and then he looks me straight in the eye, and he asks me, he goes, if your mom left you when you were young and you have no idea who she is or where she is, your dad's lying drunk on the couch right now and has no idea where you are, and your brother's sitting in jail for dealing drugs and there's nobody else at home, where would you be? And he was right. Like, where would I be? I would be tremendously naive to think that my circumstances would be any different if I had to experience his kind of environment.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just, at that moment in time, it was that moment of epiphany. It was like, okay, yeah, you know what? Time out, stop. Like, everything I had been doing up to that point was all about just law enforcement. Throw on the cuffs, sent to jail, pushed through the criminal justice system, thrown into the youth detention center, spewed back onto the streets to re-engage in a perpetual cycle of violence, and on and on and on. Like, then you're not part of the solution. You're part of the problem. Like, at some point in time, you got to intervene and say, okay, you know what? There has to be a different way. Because I'd finish my shift and I'd always go to my locker at the end of shift, taking off my uniform, and something just didn't sit right with me. I was like, you know what? There has to be
that calling.
There has to be a solution to this. Like, it's just, a lot of these kids that were in the downtown east side came from lower socioeconomic backgrounds.
Yeah.
And they came from an environment of dysfunction and poverty, where that's all they ever known. They've never had a good relationship with the police for obvious reasons. It was always negative interaction.
Yeah.
Same kids would have been raising their middle fingers and hurling swear words while riding by on their bikes.
Yeah.
Right. So, but whose responsibility is it to establish a positive rapport with these kids? It's ours.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we got to take that step first. And so I called MCFD, in the case of this 14-year-old, MCFD being Ministry of Children and Families.
Yeah.
And we were able to get that kid out of that environment and into something a bit more positive. But I get asked all the time, it's like, what happened to that boy? And I'll be honest with you, I don't know.
Exactly.
There's 100 stories like him, but at least I can say this much, that he changed my life that night. And I realized we need to do something different, something better to help these kids.
Speaking about kids and stuff, and obviously you being from the South Asian background, you know, being Punjabi, right? I wanted to ask about this because I feel like this hits like all of us being from this background. Why do you think it is that kids from our kids from our, you know, community that are in well-off families, you know, have this great support system, don't have to deal with stuff like that, always end up, like, not always, but like sometimes end up being...
You had that story too. Tell the story about the guy who never felt like he owned anything.
Yeah, so I've talked to some people in this situation, and it was kind of like, this kid told me, he's like, how would you feel if everything you ever worked for meant nothing because you were going to be given it anyways? Right?
That right there.
That's what it is.
That's exactly what I was about to talk about, is instantaneous gratification and self-entitlement.
Yeah.
Where absolutely you hit the nail on the head. That every single situation I come across where I've been dealing with these violent gangsters that are still quite young.
Yeah.
Where the common denominator between all of them was just that, and a family that looks the other way. Yeah. Where there's a willful blindness there. The ostrich with the head in the sand approach is like, you know what, I don't want to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask.
Yeah.
And so it was a combination of these factors. And what pisses me off the most is when you drive by, I'll use Surrey as an example. When you drive by some of the high schools in Surrey and look in the student parking lot, student parking lot, brand new Audis, Range Rovers, Beamers. It's like, why are you getting your kid who's in grade 11 or 12 a brand new Audi, brand new BMW? Like, what do you think that you're teaching your kid? Because they sure as hell ain't learning the value of money.
Yeah.
Right.
It breaks that connection of like, oh, I earned this luxury car. I got somewhere to drive this.
Somebody just told me the story a little while. Oh, he was a manager of one of the car dealerships, who's a friend of mine. I was just talking to him, and he goes, it's a luxury brand, by the way. He's the manager of that car dealership now.
Yeah.
And he was telling me, Cal, like, when I was growing up, my parents told me, you're going to work for it.
Yeah.
And you're going to earn it.
Yeah.
Right. And he goes, I bought, check this out.
Yeah.
He said, my first car that I bought was an 86 Honda Civic. And he goes, this thing had rust on it. He goes, but I took it in, I cleaned it up, I took good care of it. He goes, it was like a Ferrari to me.
Yeah.
He goes, because I earned it, it was mine. Like I bought it with my own money that I'd saved, and I had an appreciation for that car. And he goes, I rode it as long as I could, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. Like when you have a kid that has busted their ass, they've earned something.
Exactly.
They will not only understand the value of money, but they will also understand the value of hard work.
Yeah.
Like as a kid, my brother and I were in the blueberry fields in Abbotsford. That's why like I got mixed feelings about Abbotsford. But
the trauma from the blueberry fields.
The trauma from the blueberry strawberry fields, right?
I've done that too as a kid. I think it's
but as a
probably
kid,
too
like
bad.
it's just like mom and dad would put me on the bus with.
It's so hot and there's
the-
bugs. You got those
It's
buckets,
character
bro.
development.
You know those buckets are so heavy.
Yeah, but I'll tell you one thing: it paid off. It taught me about the value of hard work because I'd pick the bucket. Like it would take me hours.
Yeah.
I'd pick the bucket, finally bring it in, and they're like, "Okay, this is how much." I'm like,
Like $10.
That's my Slurpee right there.
I know.
You see all these aunties just picking like 7 buckets by the time you pick one. You're like,
I
what
was
is
like,
going on?
I don't know. Yeah, I was thinking, maybe I'll graduate to that level someday. I don't know. But you develop a appreciation for hard work, like when you do stuff like that. And so, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to paintbrush the entire South Asian community the same way. You got a lot of kids with good parents who have been taught the value of hard work.
Yeah.
And I have so much respect. It's the same thing where when we put on these drug and gang presentations, they're only educational in nature. It's about to teach you how you can keep your kids out of that lifestyle should the circumstances present themselves.
Right.
So these forums are meant not only for the kids, because if we're just teaching the kids, but we're not teaching the parents, the home environment is always going to stay the same.
Yeah.
And if the home environment doesn't change, neither will the kid.
They'll go in that direction, whether it be with a delay an hour later.
100%. It'll still be that same trajectory.
Yeah.
And so we make it a point of bringing in the parents with the kids when we put on these forums. But then I get 2 types of parents. I get the parents that do show up with their kids because all our programs at KidsPlay are absolutely free. Zero cost.
I was reading
right?
you guys 2 principles. Everybody's a volunteer, and we don't charge a fee so that kids, even from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, are still welcomed.
100%.
That's awesome.
Everybody is welcome.
Yeah.
And it's free. Like, if it's free, like in the Punjabi community, that's gold.
That's
you
I
struck
remember
gold,
my
right?
parents were like, in life, nothing is free.
I had, you know what the
gold,
funniest
brother?
thing is? So many Punjabi parents like come up to me and give me that look, and they're like, free?
We had someone
Like free? Like,
Yeah.
or is it like there's some caveat attached
I know,
to this,
like
some conditions?
Our last guest was like, the only thing that's free in life is prasad at the Gurdwara. He's like, nothing else.
No, I can tell you these programs are just as
And
free.
KidsPlay.
And KidsPlay,
Yeah.
right? So that's why we don't want any child to be deprived of an opportunity because it might be financially restricted on the parents, right?
Yeah.
So if we've opened up the gates now and said it's free, come, learn, right, educate yourselves, then every parent has a responsibility, right? And so there's that first type of parents that do bring out their kids that are enthusiastic, that want to teach, and they all learn something, right?
Yeah.
And then you have that second type of parents that goes, Sanuki, right? Like, like when our kid's not even involved in drugs and gangs, why should we come out and learn? Ki loda, right? And then I tell these same parents, I'm like, you know what? There's actually a saying in Punjabi. They said, meaning that there's a fire in your neighbor's yard. You're still going to feel the heat, right?
Yeah.
And God forbid, like, don't be so arrogant that just because your kids are good today doesn't necessarily insinuate that they'll be good tomorrow, right? And then when that time comes where you need help tomorrow, who are you going to go to, right? And I'm telling you the truth. I'm not exaggerating this. I've had a lot of parents that refused to come to these presentations before, and sure as hell, unfortunately, their kids did get involved in the lifestyle. And these same parents came to me all those years later saying, Buddy, you were right. Right? Like, now we do need the help, so if you can help us out. But the problem is, like, I don't have a magic wand.
Exactly.
Right? Like, it's not something where you can, I'll still help, but you can't.
But the person has to want to help themselves too.
Not only that, this is not something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to be a gradual, incremental process, which is going to take time.
Yeah, slowly but surely. Right?
Slowly but surely. 100%.
All right. Kal, I wanted to go into some more questions about KidsPlay Foundation and What was what was one of the main reasons you wanted to start KidsPlay Foundation? What was the passion behind it?
I guess before that you had the soccer tournament,
Right.
The PAL, and before the PAL,
That's right.
before the PAL,
Yeah.
there was something that happened.
You guys
right?
really do
that
your
made
research.
you want
That's good.
Yeah, we got pages.
Fantastic.
It's good.
You got all this stuff right here, man.
we got all your details.
But
right
it's
here.
definitely not boring stuff, right? And it's like
Yeah.
awesome to be able to talk to somebody who's been
Yeah,
through all
I
this,
started
man.
out with the Police Athletic League, but once again, like going back to that point I made earlier, I'd be returning back to my locker after shift. And
Yeah.
something just didn't sit right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I saw was a steady stream of kids that were entering the open air drug market in the downtown east side. We'd be arresting these kids, once again pushing them through the criminal justice system, thrown into the youth detention center, spewed back into the streets to re-engage in that perpetual cycle of violence.
Yeah.
And that cycle would go on and on.
There was a SkyTrain story that happened before PAL, I think, where you saw a stabbing at a SkyTrain with like a 14, 15-year-old kid. And that was one thing that really hit you?
There was a few of those.
There's a few of those, right?
A few of those
Yeah.
that happened.
Yeah.
And so it was a combination of various things where, especially that 14-year-old was a tipping point.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
14-year-old
in the
kid in the alley, that was the tipping point where it had been building,
like-
building momentum.
Because we almost
Right.
can't understand growing up from a young age surrounded by that. It's like if I didn't have my parents, who am I to say I would still be the same person?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And the other big thing is that we are in such a habit of following the same historical narrative over and over again, where this is how things have always been.
Yeah.
And society is structured in such a way that we embrace that narrative as our own and accept that status quo, that this is conventionally how things have always been. This is how it always will be.
Yeah.
And so accept it and move on. That is so self-defeating.
Oh, like you
where-
mean in like most norms and most bad things that happen.
Societal norms.
Yeah.
And it's just like as a law enforcement officer, this is how it's always been.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you do your job where it's like criminal offense, arrest, throw to jail, you're done.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Check.
Like don't try to
And-
be bigger than this.
Yeah, don't
Stick
try to be
that.
bigger than this system.
Mm.
The system is here for a reason and always has been for a reason, right?
And a lot of people probably go with that for
They
for
would.
careers, yeah.
But it's just like, I don't know, man. It's like when a couple of these incidents happen, I was like, no.
Yeah.
You know what? Then what do I have within my capacity and power that I can institute change?
Yeah.
Like this is where change comes from. All change is a concept.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right? It's a seed that you plant, but you have to have the will and the strength to want to do it. Where it's just like I found enough motivation on the streets.
Yeah.
Where it inspired me enough and pushed me enough. It was just like, you know what? It's do or die.
Yeah.
Where either I can one or two. There's literally a fork in the road. That 14-year-old kid was the fork in the road.
Yeah.
Either I continue on the path that I am and just accept the things the way they are.
We would never meet.
Yeah, and nothing's gonna change, right? And just be a part of that system.
Yeah.
Or you know what? I take that onus, that burden of obligation,
Yeah.
and do something about this, whatever it is. And it's been said many times before: the smallest, the minute of actions is worth more than the greatest concepts in the world. Where people can talk and talk and talk rhetoric all day long, but if you're not executing it and
worthless.
implementing it, it's worthless, right?
Worthless,
It means
yeah.
nothing. And so in that respect, it was just like, okay, that's it. So next day I walk into my inspector's office. I'm like, you know what? Give me some funding. Give me just basic funding.
Yeah.
So that I can start in a program for inner city kids. I'll do it on my own time.
Where
I'll
did
come
you
in
get
on my
from
day
that?
off.
Yeah.
I'll come in on my day off. I'll start this sports program for inner city kids on my own time. I don't want anything from the department. Just give me that funding so I can buy equipment, medals, trophies, food, water.
Yeah.
Basic stuff.
So was your thought process kind of like these kids have all this energy, and if they don't have a positive place to put it, naturally I think they're going to turn to these negative influences around them.
Yeah, so there were 3 major factors. That was one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other was, as police officers, have we really made an attempt to establish a positive rapport with these kids? It's always been negative interaction. What if we actually showed these kids that we're actually the good guys, right?
Yeah.
That legitimately care about them, and not just some hardcore cop wearing a uniform that's giving them a hard time.
Just going to
right?
enforce the law, and that's
Yeah,
it.
that's just going to enforce the law, and that's the extent of our responsibility to society, right? It's more than that,
It is.
right? Like, what if we actually take off that uniform, we're on the field in shorts and a t-shirt,
Yeah, it's
playing
totally
soccer with the
different.
kids,
Yeah.
Totally
right? What do you
different.
think about that?
You get humanized to these kids.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
you get
We
humanized.
we're demonized, and then we go to humanized.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There is
He's
that,
just like a good uncle. He's like that nice uncle. He's, you know.
Yeah.
nice
guy.
uncle that's had a couple of glasses of wine.
Yeah. Playing soccer with the kids.
You see Cal uncle on the weekend?
Yeah.
Go on out. That's
Cal uncle dressing like he's still 20.
Right.
Okay, I was about to get on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trust me, that's not the first time I heard that.
Look at Cal
But,
uncle.
yeah, there was these factors. So there was that, what you had said, and then
Yeah.
just humanizing ourselves to the kids. And
Yeah.
number three, a lot of these kids had never had an opportunity to play organized sports.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
it's so expensive in the real world.
It's so expensive in the real world, and they don't really get opportunities like that outside of school, really.
Mm-hmm.
But even with schools and their limited budgets, really, how much?
And
is the
bullying at school gets tied right into that too.
100%.
Oh, you're trying too hard. Oh, why do you want to be on the team? Come hang out with us
Yeah,
instead.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
Us come hang out with us instead. And so there was all these factors that if you put these variables together in the equation, you begin to realize that when you provide these kids with positive, constructive outlets, such as sports as one example, that's absolutely what you're doing, is that you're deviating from that trajectory that they were already on that bad path, and actually giving them positive alternatives.
Yeah.
And so
But you need something. You can't just expect, oh, I'm just going to keep them at home all day and they're just going to do nothing. Because kids will always end up doing something.
they'll
in a
always end
sense.
up channeling that energy some way.
Yeah,
It's
some
lots
way.
of energy.
I've noticed that in
bundles of
myself.
energy.
Yeah, I've noticed that in myself, where I had to build a positive system of like, okay, if I'm just sitting at home all day, I'm gonna go to the gym and I'm gonna start this extracurricular like coding project. I'm gonna keep myself busy, because otherwise, what are you gonna do? Scroll on social media till you feel bad about yourself because everybody you look at seems perfect. Things
Seems
like that,
perfect.
right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and that's a big point, especially with kids and electronic devices these days.
yeah.
So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do the same thing that I used to do as a kid. Like when we were kids, like 12, 13 years old, I'm
Outside.
not a word of a lie, dude. We were on the streets all day long.
I was
From
antisocial.
morning till evening, we were playing street hockey.
Yeah.
We were playing soccer. We were playing basketball.
Yeah.
Like we were catching frogs in ditches.
Catching frogs. Wait. So where did you grow up, Cal?
In
Surrey?
Ladner.
Oh, in Ladner. That's why these guys be catching frogs.
I was like, you're not doing that in Amsterdam, man.
No, man, we were doing silly things. Like, it's just like we'd be riding, but I mean, the other stuff too, like we'd be riding our bikes to 7-Eleven to get Slurpees. Like, it's just like kid stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
basic
And it's the
kid stuff.
coolest thing. Having a couple dollars to buy Slurpees is like, dude, you're like, I'm the man. I'm doing a transaction. It's
Transaction,
crazy.
yeah, that's-
like, I don't know. It's just like, I remember that used to make me so excited.
But
And then I got a job and I got like $100 or something, like on my first check. And I was like, this is the power I have. This is insane. Like,
Brother, I'm telling you, the first time I did it, I felt devious when I started mixing the different flavors.
Oh
in
my
my
God,
Slurpees.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I was like, you know what? I'm a rebel.
their parents aren't here.
You know, like in July
Yeah.
when they have that free Slurpee day, like I would know kids are bringing like milk cartons and just fill them with Slurpees.
Really?
Yeah, like what are you guys doing?
Check that out. Like, whether it's your generation or mine, I'm
Yeah,
telling you,
yeah,
man,
yeah.
Slurpees were the best.
Yeah,
We do the
right?
same things,
Yeah,
bro. You're just
yeah.
like
As
going
you get
to the
older
mall.
into, you know, wanting to bodybuild, not the greatest anymore, but back in the day, man.
Well, those are the dirty bulk days.
Yeah,
So,
dirty
yeah.
bulk.
Oh, dirty bulk days. Yeah.
no protein, man.
But as kids, like we would do this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And I wanted to bring those days back to these kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Where give them an opportunity to experience something positive.
Hmm.
So I remember on the day of the tournament, the first tournament that we ran, because I received $500, by the way.
Yeah, I
From
know,
the
because
department.
now maybe inflation is more now, but $500 I could barely buy anything. You know what I mean, right? Running a whole tournament.
$500 to run a soccer tournament.
Yeah.
But I was grateful for what I got. It was like $500. Okay.
Yeah.
I got this, right?
Yeah.
Like I will stretch every penny to make it work.
Yeah.
And so I bought equipment, medals, trophies,
Wow.
food,
Water, yeah.
right? Basic stuff. And so on the day of the tournament, so it took me about a month and a half to organize with the inner city school catchment area in the
Yeah.
downtown east side.
Yeah.
So a lot of these kids never had the opportunity to engage in these positive constructive outlets, these organized sports,
Yeah.
especially with the police.
Yeah.
And so once the tournament was organized, on the day of the tournament, myself and a couple of other officers, we put on gloves and we cleaned up the fields of needles, garbage, and other debris.
Because it was like
we
that.
laid out the tables with medals and trophies and set up the equipment.
Yeah.
And then we waited. I remember we could see a convoy of kids coming down into
Really?
the park with raised eyebrows and hardened attitudes. and one of the kids yells out, "Yo, where's the donuts?"
Wait, how old are these kids? How old are these kids? Like 14, 15?
12.
Oh,
12.
okay, yeah.
And they're like, yo, where's the donuts?
Where's the donuts, right? And
Cal's probably like, yo, I only got 500. I don't know.
well, I told him, I said, like, well, you know what I said to the kid later on? I said, like, we don't do donuts anymore. I'm more of a bagel kind of guy, right? So,
Oh, you're a cool
I
guy.
went with the joke.
Cool uncle response.
Cool
So,
Uncle Cal. Yeah. Uncle
but
Cal.
like as the day went on,
Yeah.
these hardened attitudes, they melted away.
Yeah.
And these kids became kids.
Yeah.
And once again, the same kids that would have been swearing at us at one point in time,
Yeah.
now giving us hugs and high fives,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Everybody
so-
wants to be a kid like that, but that fight or flight mechanism, it makes you develop this weird, hard attitude that is really, you're just scared because you've been through a hard upbringing, but you end up just being so closed off. And once that goes, you can become a kid.
You become that, and that's what we were seeing on the field. Like when the first time ever in their lives, they're actually kicking a soccer ball around with a police
Yeah.
officer,
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah,
known
yeah.
as a police officer. Like imagine their perspective instantaneously changing just like that. It's like
Yeah.
this is not a bad guy,
It's crazy.
right? They're taking out their own time from their own day,
Yeah.
from their families to come spend time with us. Like imagine what kind of positive impact it would have on these kids.
That's true. That's
And
all it
so
takes.
that program grew exponentially over the years because the VSB, which is the Vancouver School Board, and the VPD began to recognize its value. So
Yeah.
every single year they would put that much more into it.
Right.
And we
Nice.
grew that program from about 150 kids in a park in the downtown east side to
Yeah.
BC Play Stadium.
Yeah,
So
BC Play
close to
Stadium.
about, I think it was about 1,000 plus kids.
That's
There you go, man.
amazing. That's 1,000 plus kids. And also, I feel like, well, those kids' lives are forever changed. But I was going to mention, I think when I was a kid, if I look back and think about if I was scared of police or not, I don't know if this is a common experience, but I just remember whenever I was being bad or loud, like my grandma, my mom would be like, we're going to call the police on you. Don't be loud.
Well, you know what?
He's going to come at the door.
It's happened to me so often
Yo.
where like I'll have, I swear to God, true stories
Brown
Yeah.
where
mentality,
I'll be
man.
in a grocery store, like I'll be
Yeah.
at Save on Foods or whatever, and some kid will be crying and the BB will grab the kid by the arm because they've seen me on TV,
Yeah,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the BB will drag the kid up to me and start yelling at the kid, "Hey banda policeman, yeah."
Oh my God.
ਜੇ ਤੂੰ ਰੋਣ ਨੂੰ ਹਟਿਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਐਨੇ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਹੁਣੀ ਫੜ ਕੇ ਤੇ ਲੈ ਜਾਣਾ ਹੈ. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's like, wait, chill.
Nah, bro. That's like that. Scared of
well, the
police
crazy
after
thing
that.
is that kid would start screaming even more.
Yeah.
Like he'd be howling at the top of his lungs, and the
Right
manager
there.
is coming out to see what's going on, and I'm in the middle of this thing. It's
Like, it's not me, man.
It's not me.
That's why I thought kids hated you.
I didn't say anything. It's
Yeah, just like
It's the
the
BB.
bad look, you know,
Yeah.
and I just came to pick up my cheese
Yeah,
and my
yeah,
milk,
yeah.
and that's it.
Yeah, man.
That's crazy.
Guys, trying to explain this to the manager. It's like, it's not me. It's the BB, man.
Yeah, it's the BB. And the, you know what? Like this has happened time and time and time again. But it's funny at the same time. It's just
Yeah.
like, okay, don't demonize us.
Yeah,
and make
just
us
don't
look-
demonize
Yeah,
them.
don't make us look. We're not the bad guys, right? Like
Yeah.
we're "Phad ke le jana." It's like no, we're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
going to do that. It's just like
Imagine if they were like, tera badaka some gang with chow maun bolani hai."
right.
That'd be messed up though. That'd be messed up.
That kid will never talk to another cop again his
Oh,
entire
no.
life, right? And grow up hating cops.
Probably.
And so I think the big thing in our community is that a lot of the parents are beginning to see police in a different light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where they never really had this interaction where
That's
a
true.
Punjabi police officer that understands the culture,
Yeah.
that can speak fluent Punjabi, can actually communicate with them in a clear, concise way, and that's respectful and civil and polite.
That's
Yeah.
Where
important too.
we
That more
can
people
build
do
that relationship with them now,
Yeah.
sure.
where it's just like we're actually parents, we're community advocates before we're police officers.
Yeah.
And so we can take off that police hat and we can interact with the public in a completely different light.
Yeah.
And I think parents and kids really appreciate it, and that's why like our programs have grown so much, is because so
Yeah.
many more families are coming on board now.
Yeah.
So the program I was just coming from today, before I came to you guys, like over that program within a span of a year went from 15 kids to over 50.
Wow. Yeah.
Right,
it's
because parents are beginning to, every single week we have this art therapy program where kids come out, they can draw
sweet.
art, they get a chance to listen to keynote speakers, we take them on field trips.
Nice.
That's
And
cool.
it's not just kids from the South Asian community,
Yeah.
like we're very diverse that way.
And it's all
where
for free.
It's all for free. The programs are for everybody equally in the community.
That's actually
Yeah.
crazy.
And so we get people from different backgrounds. Like I remember this one Chinese mom that had just moved over from mainland China,
Yeah.
and she brought out her daughter. Like they could barely speak English, but
Yeah.
she was like, you know what? It's nice to have a family like this now. right?
That's so sweet.
that's
Every
wholesome.
Farmby community.
That's my point. It's just like, regardless of your caste, creed, ethnicity, gender, background, race,
Yeah.
religion, it doesn't matter.
There's a
Like,
common similarity in us.
We're all human beings at the end of the day,
Yeah.
and all of us are essentially craving acceptance, identity, and love, and that's
Yeah.
it, right? So, when we can have a platform like this where we can build a brighter future for youth collectively in the community, I think that's a responsibility we have.
It's a bit more of like the non-serious, like this is where you can just kind of be yourself.
Yeah, be
you know?
yourself. And
Be
also,
yourself.
we got to get this to the Musella story too.
Yeah, we gotta get to the Mosella story at the end.
But
At the end.
yeah,
Okay,
that's
cool.
crazy.
So I'm gonna go into some of the
we had
questions.
that. We had that Instagram story. Remember where it was like ask questions for Cal?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
and
we
so
had
a lot of our
viewer-
friends and like viewers that are ambitious and like law enforcement and all that, they wrote some pretty detailed questions for you.
Yeah,
All right, you know what? Let me get
they're
set.
excited about
We have
it.
some, we have some funny questions as well.
All right.
So we're gonna segment into this. All right. So going into some of the
Shoot.
questions. This is a question that you may choose to answer. If you were off duty and you saw me and Manrov robbing a bank, or Manrov and I robbing a bank, right? Hypothetically speaking, allegedly, right? What would you do?
Oh man, you're gonna put me on the spot.
We're
Yes,
gonna
like
put you
yes,
on
we
the
will.
spot.
You know what? If you're robbing a bank, that is a very serious offense. I'm telling you that.
Yeah.
much
He would
right
tell
now.
us the law is going to persecute.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
the law is going to prevail. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But in the same vein, I'll tell you this much.
That's a serious answer.
You know what? It has to be. If you think about
Yeah,
it,
it has to
I'm
be.
not
Yeah.
just going to give you guys a pat on the back.
Yeah, I know, I
Don't
know.
worry about
Yeah.
it.
Drop
Right?
on
Just
a,
leave the money right
drop on a,
there.
What if I was
Yeah.
holding Manrov hostage?
Well, that's a whole different situation,
I'm
isn't it?
screwed. Oh, no.
Well, you know what? It's just, I'll tell you this much. I would take you guys down first. Then we'd have a nice soft
Yeah.
talk after.
I wouldn't put up a
that.
fight, man. That's like, yo, it's Uncle Cal. I'm not dealing with this.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
paid
wouldn't
enough for
either.
this.
Well, another small question then. Do you think it's important for guys like our age now to focus on being physically strong and like going to the gym and like maintaining good physical fitness?
100%. 100%. Okay, so you two specifically, if you think about it, like you have embraced Sikhi
Yeah.
to its fullest. But I'm not just talking about Sikhi, but in your particular examples.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
You to embrace Sikhi to the fullest.
Yeah.
Martial arts is a way of Sikhi's life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a way of Sikhi life. It's the saint warrior
Yeah.
philosophy, that duality,
meaty peaty.
the meaty peaty
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
exists, right? And that was the philosophy I always grew up with.
Yeah.
It was just like I always needed to maintain a balance between meditation and peace and tranquility,
Yeah.
and being
Yeah.
a pacifist,
Yeah.
and
combat.
maintaining where the situation calls for it and somebody's life is on the line,
Yeah.
and you're it.
Yeah, you're right.
Then you got to step it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you got to make sure that you come through and you're able to provide that help and assistance if somebody needs it. So
Yeah.
you have that responsibility. And I think that that warrior saint mentality is so essential these
Yeah.
days for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
not just Sikhs, but everybody
Yeah.
should have that mentality where if you need to switch it on,
Yeah.
you can for reasons of good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, have that peace, calm, and tranquility inside you all the single time,
Yeah.
all the time, so that you're capable.
You can't have
of-
one without the other, otherwise the balance gets skewed.
No, man, it's
an imbalance, yeah.
It's like even that Chinese philosophy, the yin and the yang.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You
yeah,
gotta
yeah.
have that balance constantly in life.
That's true. That's for
Yeah.
anything, right? Because you could be an amazing person, and that could be it. But you can't forget that there's people that'll target you because of that,
Oh,
even
huh.
in life, right?
Well, if you're peaceful, like there was a psychologist in Toronto. His name slips my mind right now,
Huh.
but he goes, just being morally good
Yeah.
Yeah.
does not make you a good human being.
it's not enough.
It's not enough. We're being morally good that I don't cause anybody harm. Well, do you really believe that makes you virtuous? Well, no,
You're
it
still
doesn't.
straying on the resources of the world.
Well, not only that, but if someday somebody needed your help,
Yeah.
I'd be like, you know what, I'm neutral to this.
Yeah.
Not my problem, right? I'm good where I don't do anything bad.
Yeah.
But if situation calls for it, I'm not there for that person either. Then what is my use?
Kind of, yeah.
Right?
You're an
exactly.
NPC.
Yeah. A non-player character.
Non-player
Like a
character,
video
right?
game,
So
yeah.
my son knows all about that.
There you go.
That's
Yeah,
all he looks at
definitely.
all day.
Yeah.
But point being is you have to have that balance in life where, you know what, you have to have that strength of character where you can
Yeah.
put it into overdrive if somebody needs your help.
Yeah.
But at the same time, have that balance, that peace,
Yeah.
where you live your life in such a way that is morally virtuous.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Cal, we need to train one day.
I'm sorry?
We need to train one day.
Let's rock and roll, man.
I'm down.
Let's do it.
I need to train. I need to train with Uncle Cal.
Yeah, that's true.
I need to see what Uncle.
I'm big on that though. Like that whole like even sometimes you're by yourself and there's like an honest choice you can make and a dishonest choice, and no one's ever gonna know because it'll be something so small. Recently, like it starts coming in my head. I'm like, yo, you know what? God is always watching. I'm gonna just move on, and you feel good after that. Like I don't know. I've never done anything bad like that, but I started thinking about this a lot now. Where I'm like, this is who I am.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story about that. It's when I was doing kickboxing.
Yeah.
And this was like in my early years of kickboxing, so I might have been around 12 or 13 at that time, where I had a very traditional kung fu master who was also a kickboxer.
Okay.
And so he was also teaching that class. And he was asking all of us to do push-ups. And I cheated on mine, where he asked us to do 10.
Yeah.
And I did 5 half-ass ones. Right?
Yeah.
And
But like he saw.
he saw.
Oh.
Right? He didn't say anything at the time.
Okay.
But he
That's
saw.
a different Cal, bro.
Right?
Yeah.
And once I finished, as I'm leaving the class, like everybody's done, everybody's leaving, he goes, I want to talk to you for a second.
Oh.
You stay behind.
Okay.
And so...
Heart probably sank.
Right? Yeah, your heart's
Yeah.
pumping. It's just, what did I do now? Right? Like I'm presuming it's to do with that.
Yeah.
So I stay behind, and he looks at me. He goes, "Yeah, I saw." Right? He goes, "I saw." He goes, "But I'm not mad at you. I'm not upset at you." He goes, "The only one that you cheated was yourself." He said, "At the end of the day, if you did 5 and you didn't do 10, those that did 10 will be that much stronger.
Yeah.
It's to their benefit."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you only did 5, that was your choice to make.
Yeah.
Right? If you only did 5, then that is who you always will be. You will look for the shortcuts in life.
Yeah.
And when it starts getting a little bit challenging or starts getting a little bit hard, you're always going to be the first one to fold.
Yeah, that's
Right?
actually true, because there's not always going to be a coach like that in front of you pushing you on. Most of the things in like building a business or building yourself up with character and doing good things, you're just on your own, man. Like you're going to be having late nights putting in work by yourself. And if you take the shortcut, the only thing that hurts is your growth and the things that you're working on. And that'll show in your character to people.
Brother, the biggest battles that we fight sometimes is not with anybody else but ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Within
Yeah, 100%.
ourselves. And that's what everybody out there needs to understand is that, look, if things are not going in your life the way you want them to right now,
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Right? It's like if you feel that you're on a slippery slope or a destructive path and your life's not going in the direction, then you're the master of your own domain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility. Like, it takes a very weak person to say, yeah, my circumstances are such and I can't control them, and like this is how it always will be.
Yeah.
Because you take
What-
away all the accountability.
You take away all the
for anything.
accountability. Granted, I'm not trivializing or disavowing anybody's particular circumstances.
Yeah.
Where if their circumstances are difficult, I appreciate that.
Because in a lot of countries
But
around the world, just based on how you're born and the caste you're in and things like that, you'll still be at a significant disadvantage. But where we live, we can say that. Where a lot of times it is you.
Even if you are at a disadvantage, what can you control?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's within your capacity that you can at least control?
Yeah.
For those things that you can control, then you have a responsibility to do so.
For sure.
That's true.
All right. Another question that I have to ask you. Do you ever get pulled over for speeding while you're not on duty?
I have, yes.
Have you? How's
Yeah.
that interaction went?
Yeah, you know what? Just like anybody else, I ended up getting a ticket.
You got a ticket?
100%.
Damn.
You know what? It's just, but it's not a problem with me.
Yeah.
Where like if I make a mistake, it's my bad. You got to own up to it.
For sure.
Right? It's a matter of being accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that
That's
respect,
good.
like it's just, it happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
long time ago when
Fair.
I first got on the job. It was shortly thereafter where I did end up speeding, but I didn't make any excuses. That's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, you
not
just
me.
don't-
I've always
That's
been
not me.
accountable when I get pulled over, because even when I had my new license, I'd be that guy who'd like have an extra passenger. Like I don't know, but when the cop came to me, I would always be like, yes, I did this, and I would take the ticket. I would go on with my night, because the more that you resist that, the more you just kind of feel like a loser. You know, like
Man,
just own
but
up to it,
speaking
get
of
through it.
accountability, I'll tell you a
Yeah.
funny story about that. So one night, I'm by myself in the car, patrol car, and this car in front of me is weaving side to side.
Okay.
Oh.
The guy's obviously drunk.
Yeah.
So presuming he's drunk.
Hmm.
So I flip on my lights and sirens. This guy still keeps driving like that for another 5-6 blocks.
Yeah.
Weaving right
Yeah.
through the road.
As you were trying to pull him over.
As I'm trying to pull him
Damn.
over. And finally, I guess he looks in his rear view. Mind you, a couple of things here.
Yeah.
There's no tints on the window so I can see clearly into the car.
Oh.
Number 2, there's only one occupant in the car, and that's the driver, and that's it.
Oh.
Nobody else in the car.
Yeah.
So finally, I guess he looks in his rear view, sees the police car,
Yeah.
pulls over.
Yeah.
as I pull in behind him and I throw my car into park,
Ah.
what does he do?
He drives away.
No.
Oh.
He jumps from the driver's seat into the front passenger seat.
And he's all by himself. No way, bro. I lost it. What was he gonna say?
It
The
gets
driver
better.
ran away?
It gets better.
Yeah.
So it's a DC uncle.
Oh,
so I get out of my car. I walk
Yeah.
up to the front passenger side. I'm killing myself laughing, by the way.
Yeah.
I think this is the funniest thing I've ever seen, right? So I knock, like I bite my tongue now and I knock on the window.
Yeah.
And he is absolutely smashed, man. Like the glossy eyes, like just reeking of booze, like the uncoordinated movement.
Yeah.
And he puts down the window and he looks up at me and he says to me in Punjabi, he goes, "Ki gal hai?" Right? Like in English, what's your problem, right? And I'm like, what's my problem, right? Just like, you're drunk and you were driving, right? And so I say this in Punjabi to him. I said, "Paji, thodi piti hui hai, right? And you were driving." And he says to me, he goes, "Tenu kaun kehanda?" मैं गड्डी चला रहा था.
Damn, the audacity.
I'm
You were
like,
probably
well,
like, what the hell, bro?
Well, no, I saw it coming. Like, it's a chess move, right? And I said, well, what are you telling me? So if you're not the driver, then who was? He goes, I don't know. He goes, the guy got out and ran away. He says in Punjabi. I'm like, yeah, all right. Let's go. You're coming back to the station with me. But it's just, I mean, talk about accountability, right? Like,
Talk about accountability.
It's just like it absolutely flabbergasts me and astounds me that, and never ceases to amaze me, that even at those ages where they're in their 50s and 60s,
where
one
most
would think
people
when
are,
they would get it, how life works, that you're still not accountable. Right, you still don't get it, and it's just that kind of bothers me. Where it's just like, as a human being, we always have a responsibility to ourselves to evolve and transform and be better.
Yeah. A lot of people, you go your whole lives like that. People around you get influenced by that. Yeah. And I don't know, like, you had this opportunity that you could have done anything with, and then it passes, and it is what it is. But like, imagine at the end, like,
the worst feeling is at the end where it's you're in your 80s or 90s. And you look back at life and regret.
Yeah.
But
what your grandpa was saying.
You know what the sad thing is? Some people won't even reflect back and regret because they don't know any better. They don't have that standard of reference, right?
Yeah. It sucks. Like I'm like happy that I got taught that lesson at a young age. Because just don't care what other people do. Just, be good and also do good. Like you were saying, you can't just be good. You also have to spread good and like at least make some type of positive change, right?
100%. Like even Guru Nanak said that. He goes, like I heard that story constantly where he came across a village where there were good human beings and he goes, "Ujjar jao," like spread out. And then he came across a village where there was people that were disrespectful and discourteous and they were malicious to him. And he goes, "Sukhira." Right, like stay where you are. And when Mardana asked him later on, it's like, why would you do that, right? Like, why would you tell those that showed you disrespect is Sukhira Vasira and the other ones get Ujjarja? He goes, because they're good human beings and I want them to spread out, right? When they spread out, they will share those philosophies with others and teach others good.
I think that,
right? And that bend where they're malicious and disrespectful, stay where you are. Stay put. We don't want these philosophies.
Because it's sticky energy.
Out,
it's
right?
very
sticky energy.
Yeah, sticky energy. Right. I think for me, like at a young age, my parents used to take me to the Gurdwara a lot, and then they made sure I learn how to read Punjabi and write it. So now when I go to India every year, it's cool. Like I can read and write. But I think it's a big philosophy, like Guru Nanak Dev Ji and Sikhi, that like it's hard to get a human life and it doesn't last forever. So since I was a kid, I just kind of got comfortable with that idea that like, I don't know, like I'm gonna die one day, and like this stuff's pretty extreme, but like it's hard and this life is valuable and make something of it. That general notion.
Sorry, who's that? And you're absolutely right about that. Who's that scientist in the U.S.? He's very well known.
Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Him.
He's all over social media the past few days.
He is, man, but it was one of his videos that came out. He goes, when you see a beautiful flower, he goes, your appreciation of that flower is premised on the fact that you know that flower's life is going to end one day. Yeah. Right? That's what gives it value. Its beauty at that time is something that you should capture and appreciate because as you begin to water it over the days, you notice that its stem begins to wilt. Some petals begin to fall off. Its days are very limited, which makes you appreciate it even more. He said life is the same way.
That's very deep. It's true.
Adding to that, I actually saw something the other day. It was a post. It was this guy was using $1 as like American dollar as a bookmark for his book, and he's like they're both a piece of paper essentially, but one to me has more value based on it because it's in my eye, right? And he was saying like by doing this, I'm appreciating both and I'm associating value with both. Which again, like for some people that might be like okay, this is doing too much. But like when you think about it, really, like yeah, they're both will provide value, but one actually has like monetary
value,
right?
I don't know.
100%.
Could have a whole economy talk with Cal on the next podcast.
Yeah. Bring Cal on for it.
What's the Federal Reserve? What's the value of money?
What's the value of life?
Shit.
What's the meaning of life?
I'll tell you all about current interest rates.
Oh,
and,
no.
How about let's not get into that?
All right. Yeah. Last fun question that I have for you: what's the weirdest excuse someone's given you for breaking the law? Or what's the funniest?
We kind of went out. Actually, no.
No.
Yeah.
We need some. There has to be something with like an uncle or whether it's like someone blatantly did a crime in front of you, said it wasn't me.
You know what? Actually, it's the simplest of all responses. I didn't know.
Really?
Like think about this for a second. Like somebody ends up smashing the window of a store and stealing items from that store.
Yeah.
Like essentially looting it.
Yeah.
In the middle of the night, and you catch them, and like, what do you think you're doing? It's like,
it was like 4K camera footage.
Yeah, it's like, I didn't know. Like, you didn't know what? That breaking and smashing the window of a store and stealing items is a crime?
That stems from where everybody's all the criminals and everybody's always like, if you see a cop, don't talk to him, just get your lawyer, and everybody just tries to say nothing or get a lawyer, but you're caught red-handed, bro. Like just
we
at
have
this
the
point.
4K camera footage right here for you. Like it's literally you could show them a camera, like be like, is this you? No, it's not me, man.
That's happened to me as well.
Really?
Oh
my god,
tons of times it's like, no,
they think they might have
that doesn't look like me.
It's like, bro, you're wearing the same shirt.
That's you.
It's like, bro, you're wearing the same shirt. And you change the fit.
It's like when you just deny everything and you're just in that state of denial.
100%. So
deny.
it's like I get silly excuses all the time, but it was just like this uncle story was probably one of the funniest.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
It actually is. As long as Uncle's not still on the road today.
Yeah, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, he's probably watching your podcast and thinking, oh, that's me.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
We have viewer submitted questions.
We have viewer submitted questions now for you, right?
Sure.
So we have a few. All right. So one of our friends, the Baines Show, they have a podcast in the UK. They wanted to ask you opinions on the UK police.
Because they don't have firearms there. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, you know what? It's I know they have. I work with a lot of detectives from the UK.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. There's quite a few of them that have transferred over from the London Met or some of the other local police departments over there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've asked them about that.
Yeah.
Where it's like, how do you feel about that? The fact that you guys don't carry firearms. And he goes, well, we have specialty units that we call upon. But there was one particular example one of these officers gave me. And he said it was a pharmacy robbery.
Mm-hmm.
The guy walked in with a knife, robbed the place. He goes, I got there on scene.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, I'm in my police car and get there on scene. The guy comes out with this machete.
Yeah.
And he comes running straight towards the car. And I said, well, what did you do? Because he didn't have his gun on him. They don't carry.
Yeah, they don't.
He goes, I locked the doors.
Dude, it's crazy, man. I don't know, bro.
I'm like, you did what?
Yeah. Smart though. He's a number, but
Oh, man.
I think some of it, Dude, the UK changed so much, man.
Like, that's a robbery suspect.
Yeah.
That's just robbed a pharmacy, and he's running at you
with
the machete, and there's members of the public that are walking around, and you lock your door.
Yeah.
He goes, well, what else was I supposed
Do they
to
have
do?
tasers?
I'm like,
Or something? I
no.
get this still.
They may now.
Yeah,
I
they
don't
may
know.
now. Because the UK's changed a lot. I know that.
Yeah,
it's
so
crazy
he goes,
on safety
I just
right
got
now.
on the radio and called our specialty unit with the guns, right? So
Yeah.
really, you can't blame the guy.
Yeah, you
It's
can't
just
blame the guy.
At the end of the day, you can only do what was he? And he
Yeah, what was
his
he
response
really
actually
gonna-
was, Cal, like, what was I supposed to do? Get
The guy knew
stabbed?
that. Yeah. Yeah. Fair.
All
It is
right.
very common there, though. They have signs that, like, it's not even worth wearing a watch there because there's so many stabbings.
Oh, their stabbing
It's crazy
problem's
in the
huge.
UK.
It's a huge stabbing problem in London. Oh my god.
It's massive. It's actually a
Massive.
serious problem.
Different environment.
All right, Cal, this is a common theme of questions. Okay, so obviously you're a big guy, right? So the common gym bros are gonna ask you, are you on steroids?
Well, just the
This
gym
is the
bros.
common-
It's our gym bros. I don't know, bro.
This
It's
isn't
like-
us.
Yeah, this isn't us.
We
No,
have the
we
questions
We can cut
right
this
here.
out if you don't want to
know
answer.
what? Yeah, I got it.
You got it,
Steroids.
you got it.
Question mark. Got it.
Yeah.
This is the crazy thing is nobody knows my regiment.
Yeah.
How disciplined it is. Like Sandy's here, my wife, and you can ask her as well.
Yeah.
Every morning, 5 a.m., get up and I do calisthenics. So that's push-ups, sit-ups, chin-ups, all that.
Right.
And so do about 300 of those. After that, my regiment of supplements that I take, which is BCAAs, CoQ10s, glutamine, glucosamine. You have your flaxseed oil pills.
Yeah.
So there's a regiment of supplements that I take throughout the day.
Yeah.
Combined with the fact that then when I do my workout later in the day, so I 2 workouts per day, and this is 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Later in the day, then I will do my cardio, which is high intense cardio, HIIT training.
Yeah.
And then combined with weight training, so that's high reps.
Yeah.
And once again, I have been doing this 5-6 days a week for the last 23 years.
That consistency,
Consistency,
nobody can
Right?
get that, bro.
Point being
Yeah.
is that
Nobody can get that
I'm
consistency.
telling you, man, I'm not even joking about my level of discipline when it comes to that stuff, because this stuff is important to me.
Yeah.
Like if I am going to teach kids about staying healthy, staying on the right track, doing all the right things, then it'd be remarkably hypocritical of me if I didn't also follow
100%.
those principles and values. And with respect to my meals, I eat 4 whole meals per day.
Yeah.
So obviously, I'm a meat eater as well.
Yeah.
But my meat primarily consists of chicken breasts,
Yeah.
Yeah.
salmon,
Yeah.
whitefish, so that's tilapia,
Lean meat.
and lean meat. And so a breakfast would be like 6 hard-boiled eggs,
Yeah.
no yolk.
Yeah.
And
Oh, crazy
so a handful of cashews or almonds, a banana for the potassium sources, and a lean yogurt, so no sugar. And then later on in the day would be a chicken breast with white rice and broccoli.
Yeah.
And so imagine doing this
For
5-6 days a week,
Yeah.
every single day.
You do this for 20 years, you'll be like this.
20 plus years,
Yeah.
5-6 days a week.
Oh my God.
And then on top of that, when I have my drinks that my shakes that I take into the gym, that has BCAAs, that has glutamine,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that has citrulline,
Creatine, by any chance?
and creatine as
Yep.
well. So I combine all these powders together to make that blend.
Yeah.
To me.
And so once again,
powder.
you have to, like if somebody sees, and this is what I want to teach everybody, like there is a large segment of the population that is under the belief that if you're muscular and you're big,
Yeah.
that can only be done through roids.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the answer is no.
Yeah.
You can do it naturally. I've competed at very high levels. I've competed in the Police World Fire Games in powerlifting. That was here in Vancouver, and I placed top 5 in the world.
Yeah.
And so think about this. It's just like, if you live your life with that level of discipline, eating the same things day in and day out, most people would like, this is stupid. They would get bored and they'd be like, forget that, right? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'd go insane if I didn't have my cheat meals.
Yeah, same.
Right? You need that burger
Yeah.
or whatever every now and again.
Same.
But every now and again, not all the time.
Yeah.
And so, like, whereas that I might be presented with an option where, like, my buddies might be throwing a party or a poker game or whatever, like, they're like, no, you know what, it cuts into my workout time and I'm going to be there instead.
You gotta be that guy. Most people just be like, yeah.
And
okay.
I've been like that
Yeah.
since I was 18, 19.
You never felt like you missed out?
No.
People will say that to you. They'll be like, don't you feel
No,
like you're
because
missing out?
if you think about it, right, it's just like where I am in life right now, I got 23 years of policing.
Not everyone can
I'm
do this.
sitting at 7% body fat.
Yeah.
I can,
Yeah.
Like, my bench press is
Yeah.
decent.
That's
right?
insane.
But point being is that is just like when I was doing the world powerlifting, stuff, then my bench press was upwards about 450.
Holy.
Yeah.
Right, and so my deadlift was about 700 pounds.
That's crazy.
And so squats was actually quite impressive too, but I was training specifically for that purpose.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, it's that mental resilience.
Yeah.
Where more than the physical element, like I've mentally trained myself.
You don't hit
to
snooze.
Eat, sleep, breathe that lifestyle day in and day out.
Yeah.
Every single day. Like, it's just, think about it. When you do that over and over and over again,
How's your
you're
sleep?
going to get those results.
Yeah.
How's your sleep? Do you still if you wake up at 5 a.m.?
Yeah,
how do you
but the
manage to
sleep, I'm very particular about, where I need to get that between that 6 to 8 hour range
Same.
Yeah.
every single night. And if I don't get it, yeah, granted, I'm cranky.
Yeah.
But I'll try taking that nap throughout the day.
Not
to
even after a
make up
Red
for it.
Bull?
What's that? Well, this, yeah, you know what? I barely touch these.
Yeah.
Last Red Bull I had was probably about a year ago.
Oh, I feel bad
And
now
so
for not
I
having
have-
anything else.
No, it's all good. So I have my 2 cups of coffee per day.
Okay.
So normally I have that 1 cup in the morning and 1 cup later in the afternoon.
Yeah.
That's the pick me up.
Use lunch, yeah.
And so that'll be good for the rest of the day.
That's
That's
crazy. That's
there
sick.
you go. There you
Moral
go.
of the story: Cal don't hit snooze. Cal don't complain.
Cal
Cal
get the
eats
work done.
good. Do that,
like,
and you'll
people
be
have
huge.
called me crazy. Like it's just
Doing the same
I do a lot
thing,
of
right?
outside training as well.
Athletes
Yeah.
are all
So,
crazy
like,
to an extent.
You have to be,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Like it's there'll be snowfall, and I'll go running,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
point
yeah.
being, is
It's
that
like those
this-
people. Your parents will see like what's this guy doing?
That's what they say. Like
yeah.
तेरा सर फिर आया, तू आज ना दो.
बीमार हो जाना.
Cut, take
You're
it
gonna
back.
get
Start
sick.
take back, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the entire game is food.
Yeah, that's the
Right,
essence
like-
of being a sick.
80% of the game is food.
It is, yeah.
The muscles are made in the kitchen.
They are.
Yeah.
Right? And so you can work out as high. I remember this one guy coming up to me in the gym, Desi guy, and he goes, Paji muscle nahi bande. And I'm like, okay.
hilarious.
Like he goes, 2-3 घंटे gym te लाई दे पर फिर भी नहीं बढ़ते. It's like, okay, well, what do you eat? Like, give me an example. Like, for example, you're going to finish here. You're going to go home, and what are you going to eat? कहना इतू फिनिश होके मैं घर जाके ता एक बोल राइस क्रिस्पीज दी खानी है. I'm like, that's,
he just
that's
starts telling you
your
about
problem right there.
Yeah. Man, people just don't know.
And they don't
just
know. Like,
Don't
you know what?
know.
And you can't get upset at them either. It's just
Yeah.
like, okay, look.
Well,
They're
the
all
Cal's
the
gonna get
guys
better.
that I've taken into the gym with me. Like, I always sit them down and teach them.
Yeah, it's a good
It's
thing.
like, give them proper programs. Like, follow
That's
this.
sweet, man.
Right? And the most important thing is discipline, discipline, discipline.
Yeah.
Consistency, consistency,
And everybody
consistency.
starts somewhere. I was so lost in the gym when I just started, not knowing what to do, not knowing what to eat. It takes time and like so much failure, like especially not eating meat and learning. And like I counted calories for all of this past summer. And after that, I felt like I kind of knew how much to eat and not to eat. And I was getting annoyed with calorie counting. But I still think I eat about that much. But it's a journey, man.
It
It's
is.
a journey.
All right, I have a question. Another one from a viewer. It's are the ticket quotas real? Like, because this is something that a lot of people are curious about for police, right? Because like, I'm just getting a ticket for no reason. Like, are they counting ticket quotas? Like, what's going on here?
No. You know what it is our traffic section, that is their specific job.
Yeah.
Is ensuring traffic safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with any other cop, like, I'm not a traffic cop.
Yeah.
So I can count on one hand how many tickets I've handed out over my career.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
my big thing was if you're a real jerk and you've made a massive gross violation of traffic laws, I'll
Yeah.
pull you over. Just to confirm that you're okay. Like,
Yeah,
you're not drunk or impaired or anything of that
Yeah.
sort. Check your driver's license, make sure there's no significant history of driving infractions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And then I would always end it with a warning and just say, hey, look, just don't do that again. Then you get two types of drivers. You get the first driver that are respectful and say, thank you, officer. It won't happen again, I assure you. Right? And that's that.
Yeah.
Right? Then you get the other type that are arrogant. It's like, "Pfft, like, I did not make a mistake. You were mistaken, that sort of thing. Like, when you get that jerk kind of attitude,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's like you write them a ticket,
Yeah,
right?
you're in my
All
ticket,
right.
exactly. Just be some accountability.
like, it's just like,
Yeah.
I'm not being a goof. Like,
Yeah.
I'm actually very respectful. I was actually going to give you a warning on it. I'm explaining to you
What you did, right?
what you did and what
Yeah.
I saw. Like, I didn't make it up.
Hmm.
Right? Like, if it's a gross violation, you could have put somebody else's safety in jeopardy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
And all you need to say is, hey, I made a mistake. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right?
So those people that hate accountability.
Yeah, I'm not even looking for an apology. Just like, be accountable. Right?
Yeah.
Just recognize that it was a mistake. That's all.
All right. Okay, so that's been it for the viewer discussion questions. We appreciate every single one of you guys for sending them in. But before we, continue on with the final remarks at the top of the podcast, I wanted to ask you. So you said you had a story about Sidhu Musiala.
Yeah, so I was selected by the Vancouver Whitecaps as what's known as a MLS, which is the Major League Soccer Community Superstar.
Yeah.
So every MLS team had to select one candidate from their community that is doing something to promote the game of soccer amongst youth.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So I got selected by the Vancouver Whitecaps. And so what they do is they would take all these candidates and they would send them off to the MLS Superstar game and wherever it was being held that year. So they sent me to Orlando. We're flying back to Vancouver and we had a stopover at Toronto Pearson. And so as we're walking around Toronto Pearson, about to catch our next flight, there's Sidhu with his feet propped up on a chair. And, oh, sorry.
No worries.
You're good, you're good.
No worries.
You got that?
Yeah.
And his hands behind his head like that, and he's lounging.
Just
right?
chilling.
Just
Yeah.
chilling with his parents.
Oh, wow.
So his
Sweet.
mom and dad are sitting there, and so is he.
Hmm.
And you'll find this picture going viral all over the place now. Apparently, a lot of people have it now, and they've posted it all over the place.
Yeah.
Where it was a picture of me, Sidhu, his mom and dad, all
that's
four
so
of us
sweet.
together at Toronto Pearson.
Yeah.
That's so sick.
And so I tell Karen, who's our president of KidsPlay, and that was with me, and say, hey, that's
Ah.
Sidhu, right? And she's like, really? Like, we do a double take? It's like, yeah,
Really?
that's him. So I walk up to him. I'm like, hell yeah. Like, I'm going to
Yeah,
go
yeah,
talk to him.
yeah.
Right? And so I'm like, hey, man, it's just, you're absolutely amazing, and I just wanted to have a few words with you. And he was very respectful, super respectful. And he was like, "Ganda sopa ki se." Like, it's just like really down to earth, humble kind of guy, right? And considering his superstar status, like, there was no arrogance there, no
Yeah,
ego.
no
Like, he
ego.
was just like a everyday run of the mill kind of guy, right? And I introduced myself to his parents too. And then I got to talking to all of them. I said, hey, look, here's who I am and here's what I do. And Sidhu, you have a remarkable influence on kids with your lyrics and your words.
How did you always feel about all that?
I'm sorry?
About his lyrics? A lot of people would say his lyrics were negative.
Well, this is where I'm about to go with this. I'm like, you are a phenomena. Like, you have created your own genre, and there's nobody else like you. Like, you, honestly, you have been given a gift, right? And your music is literally changing the world. Like, your songs that are clean, so to speak, are remarkably powerful. But the ones where you promote gangsterism or thuggery or anything of that sort, I'm telling you, you're having a negative influence on kids, because you know what? Some kids might be prone and susceptible and impressionable to the message that you're giving to them. Some might listen to it just as music,
Yeah.
right? If they listen to it as just as music, great. Like, we listen to it, we're gonna leave it here, that's the end of that.
Yeah.
But others, it might instigate, right? Provoke.
Yeah,
right?
you were telling us, like, the kids, some of them was jot down. Like, you were telling, every time they talk to a kid about a crime or something, they give you that, like, excuse or something. Or some kids would, right?
100%. And so I said to him, I said, look, if you've been given such a remarkable gift and there's nobody else like you, then you also have a responsibility, right? Like, to utilize in that such a way that you can change lives, right? So take your message, make it even more powerful, but do it in such a way that's constructive, that's changing lives for the better.
For sure.
And what he's done with the farmers movement and all that other stuff, man, I'm telling you, like, this guy was a rock star. Literally, like unbelievable, untouchable.
Untouchable.
Like, he was at that level, like, he was stratospheric.
Yeah.
And so he listened to my message, and you know what? I'm telling you, he was so receptive and embracing. He's like, yeah, you're right. He goes, but मैं भी थोड़ा एक गल दसना है. He said this to me. He goes, मैं भी थोड़ा एक गल दसना है.
Yeah.
कहंदा प्रॉब्लम ਇਹ ਆ ਭਾਜੀ ਕਿ ਵਿਕਦਾ ਹੀ ਆ. ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਆ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਉਹੀ ਕੁਝ ਕੱਢ ਰਿਹਾ ਆ ਜੋ ਕੁਝ ਵਿਕਦਾ ਆ. ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ
It's realistic.
ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਮੰਨਦਾ ਹਾਂ, ਮੈਂ ਸਹਿਮਤ ਹਾਂ. He agreed. He goes, ਮੈਂ ਸਹਿਮਤ ਹਾਂ. He goes, ਪਰ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਕੀ ਕਰਾਂ? ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਕਲਾਕਾਰ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨਾਤੇ, being an artist, I also have to create a source of financial income for myself, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, it's not just art, it's also my life.
Right? The lives that people are living in gangs.
100%. And so he said, like, what can I do? How do I maintain that balance? And I said, well, that's up to you to decide. Like, I'm going to what I need to say, I got off my chest. I always wanted to say this to you. And like I said before, there's no such thing as a coincidence, and the universe conspired that our paths intersected today, and I was going to make the most of it.
Oh, yeah,
right? And
true.
I had to get this message out to you, and the rest, what you do is on you, right? But I always had respect for him. You know what? Honestly, he was a good guy. He was a really good guy with a good heart. And he was very respectful, and his parents were so respectful, right?
Yeah.
So, it's tragic.
It is.
What's happened with him. And you know what? Like I said, had he lived, he would have gone on to change the world to even greater heights.
Yeah, he would have. He was brilliant. And then I think you do meet people for a reason, because that's insane. Like, you had that thing on your chest, and then you ran into him at the airport.
Yeah,
also, what a flight. Like, you go from Florida to Vancouver and you stop in Toronto. Yeah. That's a very, like, out of the ways.
Well, no, Florida's on that side too, right? So Florida's on the East Coast.
Yeah.
If you think
going
about
towards
it.
back that
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
And so they'll go to Toronto, and then from Toronto they'll catch it over to Vancouver.
Yeah. So the Musala taught me a lot about legacy, because when I went to India in November, it was crazy. Every single car that I sat in, the driver was still playing his songs, and they were all talking about, like, he was going to be the greatest. But then at the same time, like, his songs that were very positive, people would start resonating with him so much. I would talk to everybody about him, because it would just be what was playing and what we would talk about. And, like, his positive messages about, like, caring for your parents and, like, how much love he had for his mom, like, things like that. So that's crazy, because even though he is gone, seeing the effect that he has on the world, it motivates me to also like do something amazing to have a legacy.
Yeah, man, it's all about legacy. This
Yeah.
entire game is about leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
It's not about you, right? It's about what you can do,
And what you can affect, right?
Yeah.
what you can affect, right? That footprint that you leave in this world.
I was listening to some business advice actually, and it was some guy, but he had a really good point. He was like, if you're asking somebody who's in the same business as you and they're like your age, they're like under 50, 60, they're going to give you great advice, but they're going to hold a few things back. There's secrets that are really making them, that extra, that top dog. But he's like, you talk to somebody over 60, 70, you realize that at that point that your life is about the legacy you leave behind. And they'll tell you after they exited that industry, everything they did, how they did it, what doors to open. And it really hit me how most people think of legacy later on, but if we can think about it from now on.
And that was the philosophy I adopted, where it's not about my personal success.
Yeah.
It's not about any titles or status that I collect. It's about sharing every single thing that I know to help others be successful.
All right, Cal, it's been a pleasure.
That's crazy.
It's been a
That's sweet.
pleasure having you on. Honestly, this is for us has been like, honestly, just as much as, and it's been super enjoyable for us. Hopefully, for you as well,
man,
right?
for sure.
But before we end off the pod, I just want to ask you two questions. So, what did you think about the podcast, and what's some advice that you have for kids that want to get into policing or want to have any type of career advancement in policing?
You know what? Answering your first question, I'm so happy that you guys are doing this.
Mhm.
It's a remarkable platform.
Yeah.
You two are absolutely brilliant.
Thank
I
you.
absolutely love you guys.
Thank you so much.
But it's just by providing this kind of platform, especially on important topics,
Yeah.
it's important to disseminate information to the wider audience,
Hmm.
right? Because sometimes you never know who's listening,
Yeah.
right? And just maybe a single sentence or a word can have a ripple effect in their lives, which sets them off on the right path.
Yeah.
And that's what this is all about. And by creating this platform, you guys are not only addressing some of the lighter stuff in the community, but some of the more important stuff as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys are making an impact on the next generation.
Mhm.
So that's the answer to your first question.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
so much, yeah.
And secondly, with respect to advice, 3 things. If you are interested in law enforcement, and I tell all my volunteers the same thing, think about it as the points of a triangle. There's 3 major points.
Yeah.
You have volunteering, you have education, and you have work history,
Yes.
right? So all 3 points should be equally balanced and are equally important.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in the middle of that triangle, you have morality, ethics, good friend circle, right? And your overall good human being. And clean record, in other words,
Clean
what
record,
I'm trying to
yeah.
say,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So, but volunteering, extremely important, because what is policing at the end of the day? You're giving back to the community. It's a form of civil service,
Yeah.
right? You're putting on a uniform not for the paycheck, but you're putting on a uniform so you can legitimately go out there and make a difference.
Yeah.
Community service.
And
yeah.
then education, higher education, as far as I'm concerned, is extremely important because it helps you think critically. Like without education, it's very rare that you'll find somebody with the capacity to understand some of the deeper topics through different lenses. And I think it's important to be able to stand in somebody else's perspective and look at it from that point of view.
Yeah.
And because that allows you a 360 all-encompassing type of perspective to look at life from different points of view, right? As opposed to just going through your entire life just thinking about things one way, one-dimensionally.
Yeah.
And then with the work history is important from a couple of points of view. It shows you, it'll show the employer how committed you are, what kind of leadership roles that you took,
Yeah.
and what sacrifices you were willing to make, right? And it gives the employer a very good snapshot
Okay.
of your character and who
Yeah.
you are as a person.
Mhm.
And so these are 3 major points that are important. The other big thing is there's a lot of kids that want to become cops. Yo. Yo, man.
Yeah, you get a
Like,
lot of
I
it.
wanna
Yeah.
be-
Yeah.
I
Be a
want to
cop,
be
bro.
5'0", yo, right?
Yeah,
Just like I
yeah.
get a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
And so, yo, how often do you shoot your gun? That sort of stuff. It's just like, how often are you in car chases?
They see the TV side of it. Like
That's what I was
stuff.
about to say. They see the Scarface, glamorized, romanticized version of gangsters and policing and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And these guys think that's what it's all about.
A lot of it just-
80% of the
yeah.
time is paper report writing.
Yeah.
Right. And so you got to keep that fine balance and perspective, right? It's not just about patrol tactics and being operational. It's about also the other stuff about being a good investigator,
Yeah.
right? Which comes with time.
Yeah,
And
sure.
obviously you're not born with this,
Yeah.
and you learn it through experience. But getting out there, learning the basics of policing, how to interact with people, how to investigate files, running major calls,
Yeah.
being part of
Yeah.
a major call, all this sort of stuff. So when you learn the bread and butter of policing,
Yeah.
which normally takes about 5 years of patrol experience,
Yeah.
only then you can graduate.
Hmm.
Personally, I believe only then you should graduate to some of the more specialized sections.
Mm.
Yeah. All right.
That's
Do you have,
amazing.
before we like finally just sign off, do you have any other questions for us, Kal?
No, I don't. But my only advice to all the youth out there is get involved with your community.
Mm.
Right?
Get-
It's just
get out there.
I don't think everybody realizes the value of volunteering until you do it.
Yeah.
And when you have done it, it's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah.
Because you find a sense of peace and self-fulfillment.
It's just scary at first to get out there, but once you're out there, you're like, holy, I was just overthinking this stuff at home,
Yeah.
like in my bed, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's so easy. Like once you get out there and once you start making a difference,
Yeah.
like imagine sometimes the smallest action in somebody's life might lead to remarkable changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for you, it was nothing, but for them, it was the world.
Mm.
For
So
sure.
There you go.
All right, cool. Appreciate every single one of you guys for tuning in for another episode of the HBM podcast. We appreciate Kal for coming on. Thank you so much. It's been us. Appreciate you guys. See
Thank
you next
you.
time. Peace out.
Peace.
Peace out.